Recording in progress.
Klik diri untuk adaptasi. UT hadir dan berikanku solusi. Semua jadi bisa kejar prestasi. Universitas terbuka untuk meraih cita-cita. Universitas terbuka surat ke masa depan kita. Belajar berkualitas tanpa batas, karena hanya UT kampus kita tercinta. Di mana saja dan kapan saja ku pelajari materi yang ada.
Walau sibuk tapi ku tetap nugas. Jarak jauh jadi gak perlu ke kelas. Jadwal padat ku kalem. Kuliah fleksibel no problem.
Universitas terbuka meraih cita-cita. Universitas terbuka surat ke masa depan kita. Belajar berkualitas tanpa batas, karena hanya UT kampus kita tercinta. Bersama UT kita bisa. Di era digital dan globalisasi, ku harus upgrade diri untuk adaptasi. UT hadir dan berikanku solusi. Semua jadi bisa kejar prestasi. Universitas terbuka untuk meraih cita-cita. Universitas terbuka surat ke masa depan kita. Belajar berkualitas tanpa batas, karena hanya UT kampus kita tercinta. Di mana saja dan kapan saja ku pelajari materi yang ada.
Walau sibuk tapi ku tetap nugas. Jarak jauh jadi gak perlu ke kelas. Jadwal padat ku kalem. Kuliah fleksibel no problem.
Universitas terbuka meraih cita-cita. Universitas terbuka surat ke masa depan kita. Belajar berkualitas tanpa batas, karena hanya UT kampus kita tercinta. Bersama UT kita bisa. Di era digital dan globalisasi, ku harus upgrade diri untuk adaptasi. UT hadir dan berikanku solusi. Semua jadi bisa kejar prestasi. Universitas terbuka untuk meraih cita-cita. Universitas terbuka surat ke masa depan kita. Belajar berkualitas tanpa batas, karena hanya UT kampus kita tercinta. Di mana saja dan kapan saja ku pelajari materi yang ada.
Walau sibuk tapi ku tetap nugas. Jarak jauh jadi kelas. Jadwal padat ku kalem. Kuliah fleksibel no problem.
Universitas terbuka meraih cita-cita. Universitas terbuka surat ke masa depan kita. Belajar berkualitas tanpa batas, karena hanya UT kampus kita tercinta. Bersama UT kita bisa.
Dapatkah langkah kecil di antara sunyi menuntun pada cita yang tak terbayangkan? Dari sebuah cermin yang memantulkan mimpi dari seorang anak yang tumbuh dan mulai mencari jalan hidupnya. Dunia yang dulu terasa jauh, kini ada di genggaman. Universitas terbuka hadir membuka jalan bagi siapa saja. Dari mana saja, untuk terus belajar dan berkembang. UT menawarkan fakultas dan jurusan yang beragam untuk menjangkau segala minat dan potensi. Tak hanya itu, UT juga berkomitmen pada pelestarian lingkungan dengan menerapkan konsep Green University yang dilengkapi fasilitas ramah lingkungan. Ribuan mahasiswa tersebar di berbagai wilayah, dari Sabang sampai Merauke, bahkan hingga luar negeri. Ini membuktikan bahwa di UT, belajar bukan lagi soal tempat atau waktu, melainkan tentang kesempatan yang terbuka luas untuk semua orang. Di universitas terbuka, teknologi bukan sekedar alat, tapi jembatan yang menghubungkan mimpi dengan kenyataan. Berbagai inovasi pembelajaran dihadirkan, mulai dari tutorial berbasis AI, siaran radio, UT TV, hingga dunia virtual dan metaverse. Bahkan terdapat sistem ujian yang fleksibel dan inklusif. UT memastikan akses pendidikan menjangkau seluruh pelosok, dari kota hingga desa. Dosen dan tutor UT hadir melalui layar, suara, dan ruang digital. Dengan teknologi, menjangkau yang jauh, menguatkan yang ragu, membimbing setiap mahasiswa menuju ilmu tanpa batas waktu, tanpa jarak yang menghalangi. Universitas terbuka memiliki 775 dosen tetap yang tersebar di seluruh Indonesia, serta memiliki 35 profesor dengan target peningkatan 2,5% per tahun. UT juga didukung oleh ribuan tutor aktif yang memfasilitasi pembelajaran. Setiap langkah kecil yang konsisten, lambat laun menjelma menjadi pencapaian besar. Universitas terbuka tak hanya tumbuh, tapi terus membuktikan kualitasnya. Prestasi demi prestasi diraih, penghargaan dan akreditasi menjadi bukti bahwa kualitas tak pernah diragukan dan komitmen terhadap pendidikan terus dijaga. Inovasi lahir bukan sekedar pembeda, namun sebagai jawaban atas kebutuhan belajar yang terus berkembang. Dari teknologi pembelajaran terkini hingga sistem yang lebih ramah dan inklusif, semua dirancang agar pendidikan dapat menjangkau ke semua lapisan. Terbukti, berbagai terobosan ini telah berhasil memperoleh sejumlah paten.
Pendidikan adalah kehidupan yang terus hidup. Mari kita jadikan ilmu sebagai bentuk eksistensi diri kita sebagai manusia yang terus ingin belajar. Semoga cita-cita kita semuanya untuk menjadi mahasiswa yang menempuh pendidikan di universitas terbuka ini akan lahir sebagai manusia-manusia yang hebat.
Harapan saya buat mahasiswa UT jangan pernah kecil hati dan jangan pernah patah semangat, dan mudah-mudahan membuat kita komit untuk bisa menyelesaikan perkuliahan di UT. Semangat terus!
Harapannya semoga universitas terbuka di era globalisasi ini dan juga di era digital tetap berkualitas dan tetap menjangkau yang tidak terjangkau. Pendidikan berkualitas di Indonesia terus merambah kemana-mana.
Di balik langkah kecil seorang anak, tersimpan mimpi yang begitu besar, bukan tentang kemewahan, bukan tentang harta, tapi tentang ilmu, cahaya yang mampu mengubah masa depan.
Terkadang ingatan membawa kita kembali ke awal. Ke masa saat dunia adalah taman bermain yang luas dengan penuh rasa ingin tahu. Dan lihatlah kini, semangat kegembiraan dan rasa ingin tahu itu telah mengantarkannya menjadi bagian dari sebuah perjalanan besar. Perjalanan yang ia jalani di universitas terbuka. Tempat impian dan potensi tak pernah berhenti bertumbuh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Professor Dr. Maman Romanta, MSc, the Director of Graduate School Universitas Terbuka. The Honorable Professor Dr. Dewi Julia Ratnaning, CSE, SSE, MSc, the Vice Director of Academic and Student Affairs. The Honorable Dr. Shine Bintor Siolemba Patiro, STMM, as the Vice Director of Non-Academic Affairs. The Honorable Dr. Bróna Murphy, as the keynote speaker for today's Bengkel Saintifik. The Honorable the Head of Study Program at Graduate School, the lecturers and staff of Graduate School, and participants who have joined through Zoom and YouTube channel UTTV. We are deeply grateful for the blessings that have made it possible for us to come together for this online event today, Friday, January 30th, 2026. It is an honor for me, Maya Puspitasari, to serve as the moderator for today's Bengkel Saintifik, entitled Exploring Doctoral Students' Mindset Awareness and its Potential to Support Learning. We are privileged to have our guest lecturer from overseas, Dr. Bróna Murphy, who has kindly joined us today despite the significant time difference. Good morning, Dr. Bróna, Ireland time.
Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. Delighted to be here and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. It is a truly pleasure and honor to welcome you today. I'm especially grateful to have the opportunity to moderate this session as I had the privilege of being your student during my master at the University of Edinburgh. So it has been more than a decade, I think.
I think so. Met. Yeah, time flies.
So thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Okay. So today's agenda will start with the Indonesian anthem, followed by the hymn of UT Universitas Terbuka, and will be opened by the Director of Graduate School, Professor Dr. Maman Romanta, MSc, and then the main agenda, the material presentation by the keynote speaker, question and answer session, and closing. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now listen to the Indonesian national anthem and hymn of Universitas Terbuka. Please remain seated. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now invite Professor Dr. Maman Rumanta, MSc, as the Director of Graduate School Universitas Terbuka to open this event. To Professor Maman, the time is yours.
Thank you, Bu Maya. Terima kasih. Yang saya hormati para direktur, wakil direktur, Pak Shen dan Ibu Dewi, para Prodi, para dosen, para profesor, and honorable guest speaker, Dr. Murphy. Good morning, Dr. Murphy.
Good morning, good afternoon to you.
Yeah, thank you for your coming to our program.
Thank you for having me.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore. Good morning, Panaten, and salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Pertama-tama izinkan saya menyampaikan rasa syukur karena kita dapat berkumpul dalam acara Bengkel Saintifik pada hari ini. Acara ini menjadi sangat penting, sangat istimewa karena kita kedatangan narasumber yang saya kira tidak perlu diragukan keahliannya, itu dari University of Limerick, Ireland. Ya. Mudah-mudahan acara ini menjadi bagian penting dalam pembelajaran di Universitas Terbuka dan juga sebagai ajang berbagi ilmu, berdiskusi dan memperluas jejaring lintas negara. Karena dengan pertemuan seperti ini, insya Allah kita bisa berdiskusi nantinya berkaitan dengan topik yang hangat dibicarakan pada hari ini. Hari ini kita merasa terhormat sekali lagi dengan kehadiran narasumber internasional, Dr. Bróna Murphy from the University of Limerick, Ireland. Welcome again to Dr. Murphy, and we are delighted to have you here with us. Your expertise and insight will surely enrich our understanding and inspire new perspective in this field. Once again, thank you. Tema kali ini, Bapak sekalian, exploring postgraduate student mindset awareness and its potential to support learning. Tentu saja tema ini sangat menarik ya Bapak Ibu sekalian, terutama bagi para mahasiswa. Dengarkan nanti bagaimana mindset kita sebagai mahasiswa pasca sarjana, barangkali bagaimana merubah mindset, apalagi kita sebagai mahasiswa pendidikan jarak jauh yang tentu saja perlu mindset yang teguh gitu ya di dalam hal belajaran, sehingga dengan perubahan mindset yang ada dapat mendukung pembelajaran di universitas terbuka. Tentu saja hal ini sangat penting Bapak sekalian, karena kami setelah menjadi PTNBH, kami selalu berupaya untuk meningkatkan kualitas, termasuk bagaimana mahasiswa itu bisa lulus tepat waktu nantinya. Jangan lama-lama duduk di bangku kuliah, dan oleh karena itu tema saat ini saya kira sangat menarik, bagaimana mengeksplorasi pola pikir kita. Para mahasiswa sekalian, Bengkel Saintifik ini merupakan salah satu wadah yang sangat penting bagi SPS terutama, karena kita ingin supaya mahasiswa ini mempunyai perspektif ya, punya pengetahuan yang lebih luas dibanding hanya sebagai mahasiswa, tetapi bagaimana mengembangkan pengetahuan itu hingga beyond ya, melebihi apa yang kita inginkan. Dengan kami menampilkan dari berbagai narasumber yang ada baik dari dalam maupun dari luar negeri, dan alhamdulillah hari ini juga kita kedatangan dari luar negeri ya, dari Ireland. Ini sangat penting Bapak sekalian, sekali lagi, karena SPS selalu mendukung visi universitas terbuka, di mana visi universitas terbuka itu menjadi PJJ berkualitas dunia. Nah, inilah yang menyebabkan kita ini harus bagaimana meningkatkan kualitas mahasiswa, tidak hanya belajar di menggunakan tutorial dan dari dosen, tapi bagaimana mahasiswa itu mendapatkan insight yang lebih luas barangkali dari berbagai narasumber yang ada, yang expert di bidang-bidangnya. Tentu saja ini sekali lagi akan memberikan pengalaman yang lebih luas serta wawasan yang lebih baik lagi, karena kami juga berharap lulusan UT itu bisa berkiprah di tingkat internasional, walaupun juga lulusannya bisa bersaing secara global. Itu yang menjadi concern kita ke depan, sehingga sekali lagi Bengkel Saintifik ini menjadi sangat penting dan diharapkan menjadi ajang transfer pengetahuan. Tetapi tidak hanya itu, juga dapat membuka kolaborasi nantinya secara akademik dengan mitra-mitra internasional. Dengan semangat kebersamaan, mari kita manfaatkan kesempatan ini untuk berdiskusi sekali lagi yang produktif dan membangun kerjasama yang berkelanjutan. Finally, I would like to thank all participant committee members and distinguished guests for making this event possible. Let us enjoy the event, learn from each other, and strengthen our scientific community. Thank you, terima kasih. Sekian, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Professor Maman Rumanta MSc, for your valuable advice and the opening. Bapak Ibu, before we go to the next agenda, let me remind you of the rules of today's Bengkel Saintifik. So the first, it is highly recommended for you to stay until the end of the event. And then the second one, please turn on your camera and use the background provided by the committee. And then the third one, if you have any questions for the speaker, please type them in the chat box by stating your full name and your study program. You may also directly ask the question after the speaker has presented the material by clicking the raise hand button. And at the end of the event, please complete the attendance form. The form will be used to generate the e-certificate, which will be sent to your email no later than 2 weeks from today. So without further ado,
Udah.
it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker for today's Bengkel Saintifik, Dr. Bróna Murphy. Before I invite you to present your material, let me read your short biography. So, Dr. Bróna Murphy is an associate professor in TESOL and applied linguistics at the University of Limerick, Ireland. She holds a Ph.D. in applied linguistics and has extensive experience in English language teaching, corpus linguistics, social linguistics, and academic discourse. Prior to her current role, she served as a lecturer, program director, and deputy head of the Institute for Education, Teaching and Leadership at the University of Edinburgh. Dr. Murphy has published widely in leading international journals and edited volumes, including knowledge handbooks, and has supervised numerous doctoral students to completion. So we are truly honored to have her with us today. And without further delay, I would like to invite Dr. Bróna Murphy to begin her presentation. Dr. Bróna, the time is yours.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my slides with you all. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes, we can see clearly.
You can see them. Okay. All right. Okay, just going to share the full screen. Okay, is that okay, Maya? Can you see everything? Yes, okay. All right. So I'd just like to begin by, first of all, thanking you, Maya, and all the team for having me this afternoon. I'm delighted to be here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my research, my latest work. And I'm going to talk you through it, I suppose, in terms of how I've come to this topic and why I'm studying this at the moment, why I'm researching this, why I want to find out about it, why I think it's important. And I hope by the end that you will be able to take some, concrete takeaways from today. Okay, so you'll see that my title is I'm not so confident. Sometimes I doubt myself a lot. This is something I've heard quite a bit during my last 15 years as a supervisor. I've been doing a lot of master's supervision in Edinburgh. I supervise many students on very large programs for their master's dissertation. And I've also, for the last 6 years, been highly involved in Ph.D. supervision at the University of Limerick, working very closely with doctoral candidates. And very often I used to hear certain things that made me think, they're thinking in, a slightly interesting way about learning, or maybe they're not really considering learning and just considering the stress of the learning. So I started to think a little bit about mindset. And I started to think a little bit. I remember one day working with a student who said to me that she couldn't really engage in a critical way because that wasn't done in her culture. And I thought it was very interesting that she said, I can't engage in a critical way because it's not done in my culture. And it made me again think about mindset and how people and how students think about their work and about elements like criticality and so on. So that is kind of why I'm here talking about this. I started researching it. I started collecting data. And today I'm going to talk you through this idea that I have around why doctoral mindset is important. Why doctoral mindset awareness might be important to you as researchers, as doctoral candidates, as master's students. And I want in particular to look at it from a language perspective. And in particular, I want to look at what we can learn from perhaps engaging with mindset work and mindset awareness. Okay, so that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I'm going to talk you through, just going to get to my next slide. I'm going to talk you through a bit of the background literature, okay, so that you can really see and understand where I'm coming from in terms of my discussion around mindset and around discourse and around learning at in the doctoral context. I'm also going to show you and tell you a little bit about my data, so what today's paper is based on. And I'm going to talk you through my methodology. My methodology comes from my background in applied linguistics. So I'll talk you through what I did and how I did it. And then I'm going to present my findings and conclusions. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how that has given rise to the concept that I want to talk about today, which is doctoral mindset awareness. Okay. And then at the end, once we've looked a little bit at the data and you can see what I want to say about it, what we're then going to do is talk about how you, today, all of you, wherever you are, in whatever stage you're at of your PhD or your master's, how can you learn from engaging in doctoral mindset awareness, how you can do it. So hopefully today, by the time we finish, you will have some ideas and some plans for taking what we're covering today and implementing it in your own doctoral or master's journey from, 1 hour from now. Right. So hopefully this is going to be very fruitful and helpful and will really help you to start engaging and thinking about your learning and how you might do this and use this information to help your development so that you can develop as a scholar, as a researcher, as a student, as a future academic, and so on. Okay, so there's very much the kind of research side of today's talk, and then towards the end, we'll start moving into, right, how can we use this? How can you use it? What can you learn from it? And how can you benefit from today? Okay, all right. So before we go into the literature, I wanted to show you some insights from the data. And I'm going to read them for you. You can read them yourself as well. And I want you to, as you're reading and as you're listening to me reading them, I'd like you to think about how aware are you of what you tell yourself about your study, right? Whether it's doctoral study, whether it's master's study, where, whatever your background is right now in terms of your research, even academics, what do I tell myself about my research? It's not just doctoral. We're talking today about doctoral candidates, but actually I find myself often going down this route thinking, what am I telling myself, Bróna, about what I'm working on right now? What story am I telling, and is it helping me or not? So how you think about your work is, really, I think, really important. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So these 3 examples allow us to start thinking about doctoral mindset, and especially here about the language. So I'm going to read the first one for you. And this comes from Mara. Name has been changed, anonymized for the data. Mara's from Algeria, and she's in year 3 of an international doctoral program. Mara says, I sometimes don't really talk about it, her thesis and her drafts or her work. I don't really talk about it openly, just because maybe I'm afraid of the feedback or the maybe criticism. Okay. Second, Era from Poland, year 2. She says, so I want to be very good, but then now I felt like, I feel better in terms of many things. I don't know. I'm more confident. Maybe. I don't know. Right? I love that one. That's my favorite so far. So you can see, and we'll look at the third one here. Sometimes it's hard to let the anxiety go. And when I see that I'm not doing the progress that I had planned in my Gantt chart and everything. Okay? So these give you a little insight into how the doctoral candidates are think about their work, their research. It gives you a little insight into the struggles. It gives you insight into the things they're afraid of, into their inner world of the doctoral world that they're existing in and living in and experiencing. And I really like this first one here with Mara, because she says, I'm afraid of the feedback, and as we know, in any kind of research, feedback is essential. We learn from feedback. But what's very interesting is the relationship that we have as researchers with feedback, how we see feedback, and that can help you or it can hinder you. If you don't like it, you don't want it, sometimes you resist it. And that can be something that, doesn't allow you to flourish, doesn't allow you to develop if you keep pushing back against the feedback. I really like just how she used maybe and I'm afraid maybe. There's a lot of hedging going on there as well. And this one in the middle, is my favorite. Why is it my favorite? Because, she starts out and she says, I am more confident, quite a confident assertion. I am more confident. And then she says, maybe, I don't know. And she kind of talks herself out of the confidence. So I want you to, as you're looking at this, think, do any of these examples resonate with you? Have you said things like this? Do you say things like this? Do you think about your work in terms of, being anxiety ridden? Or do you think of your work in terms of, I'm confident sometimes, but there are so many things that, cause issues or cause problems, or feedback, I don't like it. I don't want to give my thesis in because I'm afraid of the feedback. And I see that all the time, and it comes up in the study as well today. So that's why I'm interested in doctoral mindset awareness. How aware is the question I'm asking, which has brought me to the study. How aware are we as researchers, doctoral candidates, master's students, of the stories that we tell us about our work? So what do we tell ourselves about our work that may not always help? Okay, all right. The background to this research is set against, this picture. And one of the pictures is the changing doctoral landscape over the last 30 years. The doctoral landscape has changed a lot over the last 30 years. We now have, more international students than ever before. We've got more international students that are, making changes in their lives. They're leaving their home countries. They're going somewhere else. They're sacrificing time with family. They're sacrificing lots of different things to have an education overseas. We have the doctorate has become more formalized for sure than years ago. There are more formal programs. Numbers have increased. A diverse international population. We have parts that are online. We have different modes of study. So the doctoral landscape has changed a lot. And with that has come great development, for sure. Absolutely. Opportunities are available to international students that maybe weren't available before. Online modes allow more access to education and more access to different researchers and different experiences, for sure. However, this changing doctoral landscape has brought more pressure, for sure. It's brought more pressure. The stakes are higher. If people are leaving their families and their lives for, long periods of time to study, yes, absolutely, the stakes are higher. Within university contexts, we find that there is more accountability. Universities want students to finish. They want timely completion. Students want to finish themselves as well. So there's added pressure to get the thesis done, get to the end. And this is also something I kind of want to talk about in this presentation, because sometimes we're so busy trying to get to the end, we sometimes forget all of the learning that can take place in the middle. Okay, and I also want to bring the doctoral mindset awareness. It's the learning and the development that happens in the middle as you're trying to get to the end. And when you get to the end is just the start, because it's the start of your academic career. Okay, so within this doctoral landscape, I suppose there are more, because everything is changing and there are new modes and there are new pressures and programs are more formalized. As a result, you've got we ask more of students. We ask doctoral candidates, master's students to be more innovative. We ask you to, be more scholarly. We ask you to interpret. We ask you to be more critical. We ask you to be a whole range of things. And sometimes that can feel like it's all happening at once. Okay, which is, another reason. So there is considerable pressure on doctoral students on mental health, on well-being. And it is a growing concern. And that's another reason for why I want to do this kind of research. I want to see what the pressures are, what kind of problems do students have, how are they dealing with them, and to give a little bit of control back to students, back to you as the students, as the doctoral candidates. Because if you're more aware, my rationale, but I'll make a case for it, if you're more aware of how you think about your study, and the problems or the challenges, and the positives as well, for sure, you can engage in better action. All right? If you know, I don't want to give my work to the supervisor because I'm afraid it's not good enough, and you're holding on to it for weeks, that's slowing you down. Okay? But if you're aware of that and say, oh, I'm going to give it anyway, then there are more opportunities for you to flourish and to develop. Okay, so that's the changing doctoral landscape that kind of sits behind what I'm going to be talking about today, and why I feel this kind of research is needed to help support the well-being, mental health, and so on of our doctoral candidates. Okay. The other stream of literature that I'm going to be drawing on today as well is this awareness, mindset awareness. And for a long time, mindset awareness and mindset was something that was carried out with younger children in early years education, because people believed that in the early years, that's when children were most impressionable, that's when you could have more of an impact. And then after that, it was less of an issue. However, latest research in neuroscience, for example, has shown us that we can rewire our connections in our brain across our lifespan. So as a result of that, and lots of other studies that have come out, we find that there is a growing research or body of research on mindset awareness in education. So this is the kind of second element of where my study fits. It fits within mindset awareness in education and growing research on mindset education as well. Okay, and one particular study, I think, within mindset education and mindset awareness is Fisher's study that I kind of want to draw attention on, because she really captures what I'm going to be talking about today, even though I'm adding an extra layer to it because I'm looking at language, which Fisher hasn't done. But she says, and I'm going to read this to you because I think it really kind of captures mindset awareness in the doctoral context. And she has said, being consciously aware of one's mental state and thoughts around the doctorate allows one to understand their engagement with doctoral study. It allows you to gain insights into how you show up. It allows you to identify thoughts that facilitate and obstruct progress or learning, and it helps you to recognize what action is needed to facilitate change and development. Okay, so when I'm talking about the doctoral context, this is why I'm talking about why we need more attention on mindset within the doctoral program. There's very little research, if any, on this area, despite the fact that it's a highly pressured context. There's a lot at stake when you're doing a doctoral degree overseas, and even if you're not doing it overseas, still a lot at stake. So being consciously aware of how we're thinking about our work, how we're engaging in our work, what kind of thoughts we have around our research, how they're helping us or maybe obstructing our development. Sometimes as researchers, we're not aware of those things. And I'm talking today and I'm arguing for more awareness around this and the need to recognize what action, right? If something comes up that's obstructing your pathway within your doctoral program, to bring awareness to that and to the language that you're using around it, and to think, what action can I do that will help me move forward? Okay, so that's kind of the background, and I hope that you can kind of see where we're going with this. Like I mentioned, there's been very little research on doctoral mindset. There was, however, a couple of studies done by Albertin, who came up with a framework. Now, Albertin's framework is made up of 4 different parts. So it's made up of knowing, doing, thinking, and willing. And Albertin's framework presented all of the skills that presented an account of the skills that students need to succeed at doctoral level. Okay, so for example, she said knowledge should, if you're doing a doctoral degree, your knowledge should lead to action. It should lead you to doing something. Okay, she talked about thinking and the importance of criticality. So if you're when you're doing your PhD, she talked about how it's really important to engage critically, evaluate, analyze, and so on. She talks about doing to bring about change. So maybe it could be a conference paper, it could be writing a research paper. So these are the kind of, she had lots of different things within these big macro categories. And then willing, so a willingness to change, a willingness to develop, a willingness to take on feedback, a willingness to, to engage. So this is kind of really, so far, the only bit of work that has been done on doctoral intelligences within the doctoral context, and it's really 2022 2024 that this research has emerged, and it's all about what you need to do in order to succeed. Okay, my work is slightly different, even though it does build on Albertin's work. My own work is interested really in how students' mindsets around learning and doctoral study can be harnessed and leveraged. So how can you use your own mindset, insight into your own mindsets, to help you develop as a doctoral researcher, as an academic? Okay, so a lot of what I want to talk about today, which I'm going to show you now, is about doctoral development. It's about self-awareness. It's about socio-emotional intelligence, motivation, self-awareness. It's about introspection, stopping to think, because very often in a doctoral program is very busy and we don't necessarily stop to think. We stop to do our work, but we don't stop to think, how is this work going? How am I feeling about the work? How do I really feel about that feedback I received? So are we reflecting enough? And this is the question I'm putting out there today. Sometimes we're so much racing towards the end that we don't stop to reflect, that we don't stop to look at how we're doing things and how we can change things. Okay, so a lot of what I'm going to say today about doctoral mindset awareness is about you using yourself as your own teacher. Okay, so stopping to reflect on your work, and I'm going to show you at the end how you can, different ways that you can do that. How am I getting on? What am I doing? How am I thinking about things? What am I saying to myself about my work? Am I telling myself this is a wonderful piece of work? Am I telling myself, okay, it needs a little bit of work? Am I telling myself it's terrible? That it's never good enough. What am I saying to myself? So a lot of, like I said, Albertin's work talks about what you need to do to succeed at doctoral level. And my work is maybe a little step before that, and looks at how you can use your own knowledge that you have about your work by stopping, by pausing, by reflecting, through introspection, and using yourself as your own teacher. How can I develop myself by engaging with my own mindset and understanding myself as a researcher and as a future or academic? Okay, so the data. I set about this study. I was really interested in it, and I put out a call, and I asked if people would be interested in taking part in online focus groups. Okay. So that's how I have the data that I have today. So I'm very grateful, and I openly acknowledge and thank everybody, all my anonymous participants who took part and gave me their time, because they took part in online focus groups. Each focus group had 3 international students. and it lasted generally an hour to 2 hours. So it was supposed to last 1 hour, but the conversations became so interesting for many. They went on for 2 hours, which I was delighted with, of course, so I'm not complaining. I recorded the focus groups online, and then I used the transcriptions. So I ended up with about 130,000 words of doctoral mindset conversations, focus groups. Okay. We had about 23 international doctoral students from lots of different countries, from Algeria, China, Poland, Italy, Indonesia, and some other countries as well. So it was a nice spread of, different countries and different students talking about the questions that I had given them. Okay. It was generally structured per year of study as well. So I tried to keep the second year students together, the third year students together, and the fourth year students together, because they were at a similar stage. So where possible, each of the focus groups included students who were at a similar stage. Okay. So we ended up with about 130 words of what I'm referring to as a corpus. Okay. So it included all of their transcripts from each of the focus groups. Okay. In the focus groups, the students were given a few questions, okay, based on the Albertans framework that I just presented to you just now. So I asked them questions about knowing, about their knowledge and what they did with it. I asked them questions about doing, what kind of activities. I asked them questions about thinking, and I asked them questions about willingness. Okay, so for example, with knowing, I asked them, what have been the main areas where you felt you've had most learning and development over the last few years? Okay, and it was interesting to see what they would say about that. Within doing, and there were lots of questions, but these are just some examples. In relation to doing, what kind of activities or actions have you been involved in that will help you and move you forward in your doctoral work? So this might be conferences, it might be helping out in a research project, or whatever it might be. And then in terms of thinking, what kind of challenges have you faced around your knowledge and how have you worked on these challenges? And then finally, willingness. What kind of personal qualities or characteristics do you think are important in order for you to succeed and develop? Okay, so they were given these questions and a focus group online, and they had to discuss their way through. And very often they had so much to say, like I say, it ran over into a little bit extra. Okay. So then once we had all of the focus groups carried out and we had all of the transcripts, I then decided I would load my transcripts into corpus-based corpus software. So I don't know if any of you know, but in corpus linguistics, some of you will be aware, where we use software to look at patterning in data. Okay, so linguistic patterning in data. So my corpus linguistic software, which was the one I used, was Sketch Engine. Sketch Engine, I can ask it to tell me what are the most frequent words in my data. How often do they occur? What are the most frequent words that come up in my mindset corpus? Okay, then I can take these words and I can put them into what's called a concordancer. And the concordancer shows me how these words are used in context. Okay, and I'll show you examples of that in a minute. So if I want to look at the word I, so the pronoun, if I type it into my concordancer, I comes down the middle and I've got some context on either side, right? And I can see how are the students using that word, the pronoun I. Okay, so that was the first thing. So I used my software to kind of look at the patterning. What kind of linguistic patterning was there? And then I started to move from the patterns into longer stretches of discourse or longer extracts as well. Okay. And in today's paper, I'm going to focus in particular on chunks of language. And these chunks of language are called n-grams, and I'll show them to you. But these are fixed multi-word units that generally occur in data. And I'll show you some examples. So this is kind of what I'm focusing on today, and that was my methodology. So the transcripts from my focus groups, and then linguistic software to look at patterning in language. And I'm now going to show you some of those patterns so that you can really see what I mean in case you're not familiar with corpus. Okay, so don't worry, you don't need to be familiar with corpus because I'll talk you through it all. Okay, so the first thing I did was I thought, I'm interested in maybe the two-word combinations. So what kind of two-word n-grams occur in my corpus? So I generated a list and I took the top 4. So we found the most common n-gram was I think. The next one was you know. The next one was I do and I have. Okay, so we started with a list of my top 4 n-grams, or my top 4 fixed units. Okay, a linguistic. So that's giving me immediately, it's giving me as a researcher some direction, because otherwise, where do I begin? You know, where do I start with this body of data? So I asked my software, tell me what, is coming up, tell me what's frequent. And this is what it gives me. Okay, so do, and I wonder what's going on with I do, right? So just randomly, let's go in, have a look at I do. I go in, I type in I do into my concordance, and I get some concordance lines. So now I'm looking at I do in context. And what happens when I put in I do is the most common cluster, the most common unit for I do is I don't. And then if you look at I don't, it's I don't know. Okay, which I thought was very interesting. So you started with do, I look a little bit further, what else happens with do? Oh, don't. And then what else happens with don't? I don't know. So we're seeing this pattern, recurring pattern. And why this is important is because the theory here is that meaning comes out of patterns that are repeated, not isolated examples, but language in context. This is language in context. Okay, so this is lots of language in context used by real people, right? And this is why it was interesting. Excuse me. And it's why it's interesting for me to see, oh my goodness, one of the top 3-word n-grams is I don't know. Now, my next question is, how is this being used, and what is it going to reveal to me about my doctoral candidates, how they think, how they feel, and what they say? Okay. Now you'll see in these concordance lines, I don't know how many of you know corpus linguistics or not. I presume some of you will, but just in case you don't, these are fragments taken from all of our focus groups. And we've got I don't know in the middle, which is the most common n-gram. And then we've got little bits of text on either side. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you some examples by looking to the right of these forms, and I'm going to read down vertically. Okay, to get a feel for what are they saying I don't know about. Now I'm curious. Now I want to know, hey, what's going on here? So the first one is I don't know how I should put myself. Interesting. Okay. What else do we have? I don't know how I should, whether I'm on the right track. Oh, this is interesting. I don't know how to measure myself and the progress I've made. Interesting. I don't know if I'm too slow compared to my friends. Right? I don't know, maybe I'm more confident, maybe I don't know. That's the one we had earlier. I don't know how to really communicate what I have in my... I don't know for now if I find myself suitable with academic research. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to integrate them. I thought, oh, hold on a second. This is very interesting. So a lot of I don't knows. Okay, so a lot of I don't knows. I don't know if I'm too slow. I don't know if I'm confident enough. I don't know whether I'm on the right track. I don't know if I'm doing as well as my friends. Okay, so what we're seeing here is we're seeing doubt. We're seeing a little bit of doubt coming in. I don't know if I'm too slow. I don't know how to measure myself. Okay. What else are we seeing? We're seeing a bit of lacking in knowledge. I don't know if I'm on the right track. So there's a bit of lacking of knowledge there, or they feel that they're lacking in knowledge. Maybe they're not, but that's how they're feeling. They seem to be lacking in confidence. I am confident, maybe. I don't know. Who knows? And they're hedging a lot. There's a lot of maybe, kind of, like, I don't know, kind of thing going on. All right. So I have my data. I'm now looking at it, and I'm now starting to see a little bit inside into the inner worlds of my doctoral candidates. What are they saying? What are they feeling? And there's a little bit of doubt. There's some lacking in knowledge coming through, or they feel they are. Maybe they're not, but they feel they are. And they're perhaps lacking in confidence as well. Okay. Now we dig deeper into these lines, right? I want to go a step further into these lines and seeing, okay, let's have a look at one of these extracts and see what's going on. So I pull out one of the lines and I see this feeling uncertain. Let's have a look at this. And Sarah says, I feel better in terms of many things. Right? So there's progress, maybe. I feel better in terms, maybe I'm learning stuff. I don't know. I am confident, maybe. I don't know. Right? So there's this, I'm progressing, I'm learning. Oh, yes, I am feeling better in lots of things. But I can't be too confident. I can't pretend I know loads, because maybe I don't, and maybe somebody will find me out. Maybe I don't know. So there's this like binary in between. So we're getting to see their inner worlds and and how it feels to be a doctoral candidate and the things that they're struggling with, and whether that's confident or whether it's feeling that they know what they're doing. This is what's coming out of the data. Okay. Another example. All right. And I think this is kind of interesting because there's so many things in this. So we started out by looking at I don't know. So you can see here in the middle, this is from one of the I don't know concordance lines that I just showed you. So I clicked on this example and I was like, goodness me, there's so much going on here that I have to tell you about. Okay. So I'm going to read this to you, and I'm going to highlight the bits that I think really give us an insight into doctoral mindset. Okay. So this particular student said, if I'm stuck in something, I usually feel, let's say, so a lot of hedging here, I usually feel, let's say, held back to email my supervisors. So she doesn't want to email her supervisors if she's stuck. Interesting. Okay. And I don't really want to ask them for help just because I think that they are expecting me to do better. Okay. She thinks that her supervisors are expecting her to do better. And she doesn't want to contact them, because if she contacts them, she's revealing, I don't know. There's lack of knowledge. She doesn't know. And she's afraid that she will be seen by her supervisors as not being good enough. Okay. So I asked them, I don't want to ask them for help just because I think that they're expecting me to do better. I don't know if you get what I mean. If I'm scared of something, or if I'm worried about something, I sometimes don't really talk about it openly, just because maybe I'm afraid of the feedback or afraid of the criticism. Maybe they would think that I'm not good enough in my work or something. So those things really play on a person's mental health. So like I just stay with no contact for the whole month, right? That's really interesting to hear. There are so many elements here that give us an insight into the student's mindset. First of all, she feels that she can't contact her supervisors because she doesn't want them to see her in a negative light. Okay, so she's scared of something, she's really struggling with something, but she still doesn't contact her supervisor. She just stays the whole month with no contact because she's afraid to show, that she doesn't have the knowledge, that she doesn't understand something. And rather than asking for help, she's just, wasting her time in a way, waiting and waiting and waiting, but never asking. Okay, so I thought that gives us a really interesting insight into how stuck or isolated doctoral candidates can become, because maybe she has some feelings around, I can't show, asking a question is weakness. I don't know if that's the reason, but maybe that's it. Asking a question is a weakness. I don't want, if I ask a question, I'm going to be seen like I don't know. And if I'm seen as like I don't know, then that's not a good thing. My supervisors will think I'm not a good student. Okay, so this gives us an insight into how she's thinking and what she's feeling. And it seems like as a result of feeling like this, and as a result of staying with no contact with her supervisors, she's feeling stuck and she's feeling isolated. Okay, all right. Another example. So going back to our list, I thought, okay, I don't know, showed up some really interesting insights. Let's have a look at I have. Okay, and again, I did the same thing. I have in the middle, and I said, okay, tell me, to the software, tell me the other words that I have occurs with. Okay, and as you can see here, it's I have been, I've been, I have been comes up quite a lot. Okay, so I wanted to have a look at, again, how is I have been used, right? What's in there? So again, I'm going to look to the right of the I have been, and we can see here, I've been struggling with my data analysis. I've been anxious about achieving my deadlines. I've been stuck for many months. I've been suffering from anxiety. I've been fighting that hill for 3 or 4 years. I've been just keeping up a personal life. I've been probably a bit guilty of that in the past. I've been knowing so far, what I've been knowing so far is just a little. I've been understanding so far, it's just the start. I've been trying to fix. Okay, so what we see is them as the students kind of taking stock of where they're at. I've been struggling with anxiety. I've been stuck. So a real insight into the pressure of doing doctoral work on people's mental health, struggling, anxious, suffering from anxiety, fighting that hill, keeping going, drawing on their resilience to get through. Okay, so again, we're getting a little bit of a picture of what the doctoral inner world of the doctoral candidates is like. Okay, so then I did the same, and I thought I need to go into these lines and have a look at some extracts. Okay, and I did. And I especially was interested in the anxiety around the doctoral study. And I did a quick search in the corpus, I did a quick search for anxiety and anxious. And anxiety, the words or the forms anxiety and anxious occurred 82 times in the corpus. And I just had a quick look for well-being, and well-being occurred only 11 times. So the students tended to talk less about well-being or mention well-being, and more about the anxiety, the anxious anxiety they felt around it. Okay, and when I looked at the extracts, we found just more insight into the mental health side of the doctoral mindset. So one student said, I think the biggest psychological issue is anxiety. Managing your anxiety level and anxiety during your PhD, and taking care and minding your well-being. So they openly said that you have to look after your well-being. You have to look after yourself, your mental health and yourself during this very stressful time. Another student said, sometimes it's hard to let the anxiety go. And when I see that I'm not doing everything I had planned, and I get feeling like I'm not making any progress, and, all the rest. And then I'm still working on that for me. My anxiety levels, especially, I've been very anxious about achieving deadlines, hitting the milestones. So a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety around doing their doctoral research. Okay. Also, what came up when I started looking here was imposter syndrome. Okay. So a lot of the students as well, when I dug into these examples, they talked a little bit about, sometimes I get that imposter syndrome. I start questioning myself. How did I get here? What am I doing with my life? And you can imagine people wondering what they're doing with their life when it gets very tough. So sometimes it gets frustrating. I have to keep it together. I have to put myself together. I have to just finish things. I just keep giving, I just keep giving myself those positive vibes. So you're seeing that the students are recognizing that there's a lot of strain, a lot of stress. They doubt themselves, which we saw in the earlier slides, but they have to try and keep themselves positive to keep going to get through. Second student says, how do I convince myself that I'm good enough? The imposter syndromes keep on chasing me. Okay, which is really interesting, and again gives us an insight into the fact that the student keeps, thinking that the imposter syndrome is hunting her. Okay, that's an interesting choice of word there as well. And then the third example, I'm still struggling. However, I think it's relatable. I want to ensure myself that I'm good enough. Again, this idea of being good enough, imposter syndrome. I don't think I'm good enough. How to convince yourself that you're good enough keeps coming up all of the time, and it gives us a huge insight into doctoral mindset and the weight of things like imposter syndrome, anxiety, and how that has an impact on doctoral development. Okay, and success as well. Okay, all right. So lots of examples coming out. And again, I had to look at You Have To, which is another example here. And similar kind of things coming out. You have to sacrifice your personal life. You have to be independent. You have to keep positive. You have to face the pain of ignorance. I thought this was really interesting. The pain of ignorance, not knowing. Okay, it was seen as the pain of ignorance. You have to make mistakes. You somehow have to be open to, people here. I'm stuck on perfectionism and feeling like, everything has to be perfect. Okay, all right. So that was my, insight into the data. And now I want to try and bring this together for you. What does this analysis reveal? I think it reveals that some insights into the inner world of doctoral researchers. Okay, so it's showed us by looking at the language they use, looking at how they use their language within the focus groups, we got a feel for what they say about their work. Okay, we're getting a feel for how they feel themselves as doctoral candidates, and we're getting an idea of what kind of thoughts they engage in. Okay, now, with this background, I want to now introduce this concept of doctoral mindset awareness. Okay, so today I'm introducing this. I'm working on a book at the moment on doctoral mindset awareness, and a lot of this will be feeding into that publication. And my point around this is I want to say that I want to flag up and highlight this concept of doctoral mindset awareness, which I'll call DMA. And I want to highlight in particular, which hasn't been done up to now, is the role of language and how language allows us access into how students think and talk and how they experience the doctoral process. Okay, because Burton 2024 talks about language, and it says language does not determine our thoughts. However, it does focus attention and perception on particular aspects of reality structures and cognitive processes. And therefore, language reflects and shapes our thoughts, making it a natural entry point into exploring mindset. Okay, which is everything that we've been talking about today. It's based on language. How is language being used by these students? What is it revealing? What's it showing? What kind of focus is it giving us on how students think and talk? And as a result, that's why I'm using language as an entry point into exploring mindset. Okay, doctoral mindset awareness, as I'm talking about it today, it looks at what's been given attention here. Right? We saw some examples already. Lack of knowledge, some doubt, lack of confidence, struggling with imposter syndrome, struggling with not feeling good enough, struggling with thinking you have to know everything. And I'll talk about that in a minute. You don't. Who knows everything? I wish I did. I don't. So you don't have to know everything. But sometimes there's this pressure coming out of the data that suggests that the doctoral candidates feel like they have to know everything. And it's put added pressure on yourselves. It's okay to ask a question. It's okay to show that you don't know or that you didn't understand or you're struggling. But that's not what I'm getting from the data. I'm getting from the data that everything needs to be perfect. Everything needs to be going up all the time. But actually, in reality, any kind of research is up down, up again, down again, sometimes very low, then back up again. And you'll get there in the end, but it's like that. It's not like, whoops, it would be great if it was, but it's not. So my doctoral mindset awareness is looking at what's been given attention from a linguistic perspective. It's showing what it's revealing about doctoral students, how they think, how they talk, how they engage with their doctoral journey. Okay, and this is where I want to come in and show you some examples in a minute about how you might want to do this. Okay, so that's the kind of concept behind the mindset awareness, why and how we can use language as a way of tapping in, how we start noticing our language and being aware of our language use. Okay, now I'm not going to go into huge detail on this, but this is the foundations of my theory and my concept of doctoral mindset awareness. For me, it involves 4 different elements. Number 1, the point that I mentioned earlier, which is doctoral education, that changing landscape, that pressure on mental health, physical health. It's these charged programs where there's a lot going on, and I believe that there's a need for more attention to support doctoral students around academic needs, but also socio-emotional needs around their work. Okay, can we help students more with the stresses around their research? I think so. Okay, it's not really being done yet. It hasn't. We're focusing in on the academic things all the time, but how about the socio-emotional, students' engagement and how they feel about feedback, how they feel about their draft, how they feel about that conference paper, how they feel about researching and writing? That stuff isn't really being covered, and that's where doctoral mindset awareness kind of taps into that as a foundation. The second foundation, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm very much a linguist and teacher educator, but I have drawn from the literature on psychology, and it's all about awareness around one's own thoughts, one's own beliefs, one's own triggers, and one's own behavior, and how awareness is essential for growth and development, right? And that's a key thing in my concept of doctoral mindset awareness. If we're not aware, we can't change, but you can start to change what you become aware of. Okay, and this links into Dweck's 2006 growth mindset, this idea of growth mindset and the idea that we could always improve. You put in the time, you put in the effort, we can get better. Even if it's just a little bit better we're aiming for, we can get better. So this idea of, for psychology and awareness is central to what I'm talking about. The third foundation of my concept is from neuroscience. Again, I am not a neuroscientist, but the literature really feeds into this concept that I'm talking about today. And it says that, let me just give you a little bit, I don't want to give you, So the second point here is that many of us go through life without any explicit conscious awareness that we are in a default automated mindset. So I'm thinking back to the student at the very beginning who said, and this was year 3, I never contact my supervisors when I don't know something or if I'm struggling. Now, she said that, she knows that, but she doesn't have a conscious awareness that she's in a default mindset. She's never thought, oh, hold on a second, I do this thing. I need to stop this. I need to change it. I need to do something better because I'm spending 4 weeks struggling and I'm not asking for help. How can I improve if I'm not asking for help? So she is going through life in a conscious awareness, without any conscious awareness of the fact that this is something that's happening all the time, but she's never actually asked a question or tried to change it. So my point is here that it's not possible to change our reactions or behaviors if we don't realize that they're being influenced by our mindset, right? Like that student. She's not aware that that's a mindset or she's being influenced by her mindset and she just keeps on doing the same thing all the time. And my argument today is that language, if we stop and we pause and we reflect and we notice and we look at the language we're using and we look at our patterning around that as well, that language can provide evidence into patterns that express thoughts. And we can change those things. If we know, if they're not serving us, we can change those things. We can develop, we can be our own teachers, and we can use these things for self-development, to push us further in our PhD research, to open up opportunities that we may not have engaged in before. Okay. And the fourth foundation of the concept that I'm putting forward today is drawing on my own area, where I'm very comfortable within this area, and the other elements really support it, is from applied linguistics and education. And it's the concept from education of reflective practice, that we stop to engage and we've got questions that help us engage with elements that we want to look at. The second thing is from corpus linguistics, the language patterning. And this doesn't have to, you don't have to use software to look at patterns. You can also do kind of, a thematic analysis. You can look at the big things that keep coming up for you. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But it's patterning. Whatever way you want to look at it, it's patterning of some kind. What are the things that keep coming up? What are the words you keep saying? What are the behaviors that keep coming up? Where you say, I don't want to give my draft in. I don't want the feedback. I don't want to read the feedback. I don't want to contact my supervisor. I say I don't want a lot. Okay, maybe I should look at that. Maybe I could change that. Okay, and the last thing are noticing these patterns. Again, from language education, we've got, noticing, grammar structures, and we bring this as a technique very often into the language classroom. Okay, so this is my foundation for the doctrine mindset awareness, with language at its very core, at its very center, and awareness around language and patterning, and what we can do with that for development and increased learning. Okay, so I want to just take a moment now as we start to kind of wind down towards the end, and I'd love you to have a look, and what I would love is maybe if you could put some ideas in the chat box as well. And I've given you 3 scenarios here, okay, and we'll read them out together. But I want you to think about, and maybe type in some ideas if you can, if you don't mind. What kind of learning and action do you think could happen here if students became more aware, or they noticed this pattern that they were doing? Okay, so the first pattern is student A always says, I'm not ready to send my chapter draft in yet. I just need to fix X. I just need to do Y, and then it'll be ready. But then X is done and Y is done. And how many of you are thinking, oh, that's me, or I've done that, I've done it. Both hands up, I've done it. It's not ready yet, I just want to do this. And when that gets done, it's, I just like one more little thing. Right, but if we notice that we did this all the time, and what could we learn, and what kind of action might come from saying, okay, let's stop. I do this all the time. I'm going to do something different. So if you're writing in the chat box, I'd love if you could put in what kind of learning, if the students stop doing this, what might happen? What kind of learning might come of it? The second, 02. So if you're putting in some comments, just put 02 for this one. Student B always says, my supervisor's feedback always makes me feel bad. I just can't read it. Okay, now, this is how the student feels every 4 weeks when they get their feedback, all right? What kind of learning and action could happen here if the students became more aware of this pattern? Student C, I feel I'm not good enough in my supervisions and I feel intimidated. And again, what kind of learning and action could happen here if students became more aware or noticed this pattern? Okay, so I don't know if any of you have put anything in the chat, but if you could maybe just drop in some ideas for each of these 3. So number 1, number 2, and number 3. So what kind of things could happen? What kind of learning could happen if we were more aware of these? Maya, I don't know if you can see if anybody has put anything in the chat there.
We still have no response.
No response yet? Okay. All right. So just, have a little think about, my supervisor's feedback always makes me feel bad. I don't feel I'm good enough. What kind of, learning can come from that? Okay. If we notice this pattern, for number 3, for example, I feel I'm not good enough in supervisions. I feel intimidated. Why do you feel not good in supervisions? Okay, you're there to learn. It doesn't, so it's these restrictions that that seems to be coming from the data, these restrictions around, I have to be something, I have to be better, I have to be good enough, I have to impress all the time. Even though you're a doctoral candidate and you're supposed to be learning and, you're supposed to know parts on this and learning parts of something else, there seems to be a huge, huge pressure emerging from the data on being perfect and, having to be a certain standard, and nobody seems to be very sure what that standard is, but people hold themselves to a high standard. Okay, so if we stop and we become more aware and we notice these patterns, action and all good things, better things can happen. Okay, so if number one, for example, if the student stops and saying, okay, actually that draft, yes, could it be better? Absolutely. But am I going to sit, if I spend another 4 weeks, am I going to change it dramatically? No. Okay, off it goes. Bye-bye, off it goes to supervisors. Okay, and in that email, it absolutely can say, dear supervisors, I'm attaching my draft. I know it still needs work on particular areas, but look, I'm just going to send it now and get some feedback so that I can improve things. You could absolutely also, when you're doing something like that, add in comments throughout your draft, where you say, oh, this section needs some work, so maybe some feedback on this would be great. This section needs some more work and feedback on this would be great. So doing something like that where you're interacting with your draft. It's not a perfect draft. You've said that. Nobody expects it to be a perfect draft, but you've released it. It's gone. It's gone to the supervisor. You're going to get feedback. That feedback's going to make it better. Okay, it's going to help you to make it better, and you're going to improve on it. But if you hold it on for another week and another week and another week and another week and another week, what happens is you waste time. You don't get any feedback. It doesn't get any better because you're kind of stuck with it. So what kind of learning and action could happen if you became more aware of this pattern? So much learning can happen. It opens the door for learning. Okay, my supervisor's feedback always makes me feel bad. Supervisor's feedback is there to help you to action it. And maybe you could look at it and say, what can I learn from this? What can I take away from this? What did I not know before I read this? Okay, and then you reframe it as in, this is going to help me. This is going to make my draft better. This is going to help me improve. Okay, so this is kind of an example of the doctoral mindset awareness in action, that you're catching those moments through noticing how you're using language to talk about your work or to say things about your work, and then you're stopping, you're reflecting, and you're doing things slightly differently. Okay, I don't know, have there been any other comments, Maya, on the chat there?
Yes, we do have some responses from Arjus Valentin. He says, one better thing can happen, he says.
Absolutely, I agree, 100%, yes.
Yeah. From Erna Risnawati, we have 2 repattern coping strategies, she said.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
From Julius, number 01, I will never deliver the draft. Or 02 and 03, although I already start the draft, I cannot finish it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think that's it, that I think, if anything that we're learning, even just from the little bit of data that we saw today, that good enough is okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. There are always going to be opportunities for improvement. And sometimes you just have to send something, and there's nothing stopping you from writing into your chapter, with the track changes. This section really needs a little bit more work, but can you give me some feedback on that? Or I really feel that this section is really good. I'd like your feedback on that. So, you're taking control, and you're taking control, and you have agency, and you're taking action as well. And you can be a part of the feedback process. You can give that feedback on yourself as well, on your own work. Absolutely. And get more and say, look, I need a bit of help with this, or I need a bit of help with that. So my doctoral mindset awareness is about raising awareness around the language and noticing that language. Okay. All right. Thank you for engaging on that. Now, what can you do? Okay, how can you go away today from this talk? I hope you will go away with something good from it. How can you engage in doctoral mindset awareness? Okay, so number one, this is one way, not the only way, just one. I would recommend writing a daily reflective journal on your thoughts around your research. Okay, so even if it's just 3 or 4 sentences, today was a great day. My supervisor gave me my feedback and it was really fantastic, right? Maybe that's it. The next day, oh, I'm really struggling with the lit review chapter. I really feel like it's, very, challenging for me. I don't want to write it and I feel a bit stuck. And then the next day you're like, lit review chapter, still stuck with it, still stuck, whatever it might be. And then you read back at the end of the week and you review what you've said with a highlighter. You don't need software, right? You highlight, okay, I said this and I said this and I said this and I said this. 7 days and I'm saying the same thing. Okay, I need to see what I need to do here. I need to ask for help. I need to think about this differently. I need to do something else. So you're noticing the patterns. What are you saying? And as a result, you're taking action of some kind. Okay. Now it's very hard to take action of any kind, like I said earlier, if you're not aware of the things you're saying, of how you're thinking and how you're doing. So I think as a way of moving forward, right today, you can do this. You can get a piece of paper or get your laptop or your tablet and you can open up a document and call it doctoral reflections. And it doesn't have to be pages and pages every day. It can just be an entry, a couple of lines every single day. And you do that for 7 days, you review, you go back and you do it for another 7 days, you review, you go back and look at all 14 days, you highlight, so you're really engaging with your own reflections and it's giving you that distance to go, right, what am I thinking about my work? And then you read it and you see. And some of the questions you could ask yourself are like, what am I telling myself here that's keeping me stuck? Right? If my student Mara here in the data kept a journal, she would see very quickly, I'm not engaging with my supervisors, I'm not asking them questions, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. So she would say, maybe I should change and maybe I should have more contact with my supervisors and maybe I should ask them more questions. Okay, and that allows you so by journaling, a reflective journal allows you to engage with your thoughts around your work, because otherwise you don't know. They're thoughts, they're gone. You're not aware of them. You forget them. So you can ask yourself, what am I telling myself that may be keeping me stuck or maybe be keeping me fearful? I'm not talking to the supervisors. I'm not doing I don't like feedback. I'm trying to hide. I don't want to do the conference paper. I don't want to write the abstract. And I'm doing everything else except doing that. Okay, I've talked a lot today about the kind of difficulties that have come up, but also I didn't see a huge amount of positive stuff, not positive stuff. I didn't see a huge amount of conversation around progress. And I don't think that's been given enough attention. So I think when you're writing in your daily journals, you have to ask yourself, have I noticed the good stuff? Have I noticed enough of the good things that I've done? I got good feedback. I did a good conference paper. I submitted an abstract. Keeping a note of all of those things and the positive trains your brain, again from neuroscience, it trains your brain to notice the good things, because sometimes our brain will just go into a natural default of noticing all the bad things. Okay, so have I given myself credit for what's gone well? Right? How do I react to feedback? How do I react to criticism? It happens. We get it. How do I react? Can I learn? Can I bounce back? Or do I really feel defeated? And what can I learn from this? And one of the most important questions here at the end that I'd love you to think about is, what can I say or do now instead that will help me to develop? Okay, so what can I say or do now, having engaged in this critical reflection, notice the language, notice how you're talking about all of these things. What can I do differently? Right? You as a teacher, you're being introspective, you're reflecting, you're thinking, you're journaling, you're engaging, you're taking control and taking responsibility for your development as a researcher. And this is a brilliant way of doing it, in my opinion. And, you can think about what changes can I make that are, by the end of the 4 years that will have contributed to my development as a scholar, as a researcher, and so on. Okay? All right. Okay, to end. Right. So I'd just like to, I suppose, highlight some concluding comments and then talk briefly about moving forward. So this is my idea around doctoral mindset awareness, which is based against the doctoral landscape has changed massively in recent times. It's also based against the literature on mindset in education, which is flourishing right now. A lot on undergraduates, a lot obviously that has been there for years and early years, very little on the doctoral context, very little. Albertin's work 2022 and 24, and now hopefully my work will come into this as well. And this idea of doctoral mindset awareness and how we can harness and leverage our own insights into mindset. Okay, so what can you do with how you think about mindset as a concept? Okay, I do think I'm arguing for going forward. I do think doctoral context needs more awareness around language patterns and around reflection. I always believe from my own experience that there isn't enough reflection around the doctoral programs. Very often it's a key component of master's programs. Teacher education is all about reflecting, and very often I see in the doctoral context there's not a lot of time or space given for reflection. So I'm really putting forward this idea of contemplative doctoral pedagogies. It's not my term, but it does exist. The contemplative doctoral pedagogies, so that we're thinking, it's not all about the end goal. Absolutely, that's where we want to get eventually, but it's all about the learning that goes on throughout the journey. So contemplative doctoral pedagogies, and you as a researcher through reflection, through introspection, can tap into your mindset, your thoughts, and harness them, leverage them, use them for development. For your development, and you can do that with a friend. It doesn't have to be just writing your own journal. It can be, a reflective discussion with somebody else, where you record it and you listen back and you take notes and whatever works for you, that allows you to tap into that. The third thing I want to highlight that I feel that doctoral contexts don't do enough of either yet is this idea of socio-emotional awareness. Around our research, around feedback, around how we engage with our work. It is a high pressured environment. Like the data shows, it shows a huge mental health strain. And sometimes I think we focus on, in an academic context, we focus very, very much on the academic side and maybe less on the socio-emotional side, things like imposter syndrome, certain feelings around people's work and so on. And I think we can do more to support that. And I think DMA is part of feeding into that support as well. Okay. And the last thing is for really to hand it to you as well from today, so that handing over this to you, for you to think about the practices that you can now, begin as part of your own autonomous approach to learning and development. So hopefully that you'll take some of these ideas that we had today and that you'll maybe start a journal, or you'll start engaging more with how you think about your research, the things that might be stopping you, the things that might be helping you, and that you'll provide a pathway for self-development and for professional development that's based on improving yourself as well. Okay. So just like to say thank you very much. My email details are there. My LinkedIn details are there. And thank you for your time. And I hope you'll take something beneficial away today that will help you on your doctoral journey. And I wish you all the very, very, very best of luck with your studies. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Bróna Murphy, for your insightful and interesting presentation. So it is interesting to note that because I used to be an international student as well, and then when you raise some problems there and some issues, and then I feel that was me.
Yeah. It's all of us at some times, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, so the journey of being a student is not only, you mentioned that it's not only the academic, but also the social emotion as well there involved. And then I believe the the participants also are they are the candidate of doctoral as well, and then some graduate students, and then those who wants to plan to continue their study abroad. So we will now proceed, Bapak Ibu, with the question and answer session. So if you have any question, you may click the raise hand button or type them in the chat box. So, and then if you are joining us live on through YouTube channel, you could ask a question by typing it in the comments. So if you don't mind, I think I want to ask a question first, Dr. Bróna.
Yes.
Speaking about the culture, you mentioned that you also supervise some international students from different countries. Regarding to the culture that the students hold, does it influence them to have the mindset as the students? So, for example, when in my own experience, I used to feel that fear of being failed, because if I failed, I need to, for example, give it the fund back to the fund to the funder. So that's kind of fear things. And then the cultural context, does it influence how they believe or how they have the mindset to be
Yeah,
a
thank
student?
you. Thanks, Maya. Yes, absolutely. And all of my background has been working with the international students for the last, 20, 25 years. And yeah, I would think just from these early stages in the research and looking at the data, and just my own personal interactions, I think, with students over the years, I do think that culture has, and cultural background, in particular learning backgrounds. So different cultural learning backgrounds, I think, have a huge influence on how we think about feedback, how we engage with our supervisors. In some cultural contexts, there's a hierarchy, and there are very defined roles. And I think sometimes that's where, I don't want to reveal something to the supervisor in case they think I'm a bad student. And that kind of thought process comes to that. And sometimes international study, it's about so much change. There's so much change when you're studying abroad for a long period of time. And part of that is kind of becoming, and some people aren't aware of it, but part of that is becoming aware of the old patterns of the old learning environment and adapting to the new learning environment. And I think of, I always think about one of the first things I ever heard that made me think about this project about 6 years ago. And it was a student from an Asian learning context. And she had said, I can't be critical in my master's dissertation. I think I might have said to her, can you engage more critically with the literature? And she said, no, I can't. And I thought, that's interesting. Why do you think you can't engage with the literature in a critical way? Because she just said, no, I can't do that. And I thought, okay, can you tell me why? And she said, well, because that's not what we do in our culture. It's impolite. It's rude. And I thought that's really fascinating. I do owe her that conversation. I owe this project and these ideas to her, because it was just really interesting. And I thought, wow, I hadn't thought of it. I hadn't thought of it like that. And it just goes to show that she didn't want to critique, or she just thought that it was impolite. If somebody's written a book, it needs to be good, and you need to tell them, oh, this is fantastic, and they're revered, and it's an important thing to have done. But so we had to go through what criticality meant and what was expected, and because it was something that was assessed on the master's program, it was very important, for her to start to do that. But these are cultural barriers in a way that you need to become aware of in order to progress and to succeed, especially in doctoral context as well. So yeah, to answer your question, I do think that cultural learning backgrounds and other things as well will have a huge impact on how we think, and lack of awareness around that means that we continue doing the same thing forever, even in a new context. So stopping that and being aware allows you to adapt within a new learning environment.
Thank you very much. Yeah, especially doing the doctoral degree when we almost have no classes, and then we need to do it alone, and then we become the international students being far away from our home country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quite
Yeah,
lonely.
there's so many influential factors that make it, quite a nice, and that came up in the data that sometimes PhD journey can be quite lonely.
Yeah.
Quite a lonely journey anyway. And then you add in pressures from oneself and things like that add to it to make it even more difficult sometimes.
So, you mentioned about the lack of knowledge and then lack of confidence, because sometimes probably the students think that, okay, I feel confident enough, I finish the draft, and then when they meet their supervisor, and then the supervisor, no, it's not good enough, and then they come back home and then crying, and then thinking to just end this study, go back home, probably this kind of feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I hear it all the time. And I hear that, and it's and again about, how we conceptualize and how we think about feedback. And it's a stepping stone into, change and development and success, in my view. But yes, absolutely. Is it hard to take on a human level? Absolutely. Of course it can be. If you think something is good, and then you get some feedback that it needs a little bit, a bit more work and so on. Yeah, absolutely. It can be, soul destroying sometimes, but you allow that space and time to sit back and think, and then reflect on the feedback and see how you can action it. And generally, from my experience, that feedback informs, success, and yes, hard work, absolutely. But a lot of development, because you understand why it was needed and you understand where it now fits. So part of all of that is trying to manage those, that challenge, so that it doesn't take you down a path where you don't do any work for 6 weeks and you feel behind, and then it impacts on how you think. So again, there's awareness around all of that. Yes, look, feedback, everybody, and it's not just you. Everybody gets feedback like that. It's just part of the journey. So being able to tweak and change how you think about it, or have that awareness, I do think it can really help in minimizing those bigger feelings around, despair, when you do get feedback that, that is bigger than what you were hoping for.
Okay, thank you. So we're still waiting for the question. Bapak Ibu, if you have any question that you want to ask, probably the struggle that you are facing, because we do have here, in Universitas Terbuka, we apply open and distance learning, so we barely see the students offline. So
yes,
they do mostly online, and then mostly do the learning by themselves. So we have one question from Ibu Agustina Lestari. I think you may know her.
Yes, I know Tina. Yes, hi Tina.
Yes, so thank you for your presentation. From your data, in what context or sentences the word supervisor usually come up?
Okay, sorry, can you say that one again? It just went off.
In what context or sentences the word supervisor usually come up? Based on the data.
Sorry, say that in the data?
Yeah, the data that you have gained.
Yeah. So with the context, so it's very much across all. So within a 4-year PhD context, the most of it was actually online. as well. Most of the supervision for the students are online. They're mostly arts and humanities students as well. But yeah, most of their supervision was online. So a lot of them probably would be working on their own, like your students as well. But also they would have had more recently in the last few years, they would have had, you know, space within the university as well. So they would get the chance to meet other students, but not necessarily their supervisor face to face. So that, you know, so it's what I said earlier on about the changing, you know, PhD and the changing doctoral landscape. You know, for many years it was in a room where everybody was there, and now this has changed, you know, dramatically since COVID as well. And as a result, that'll bring its own, probably brings maybe extra challenges as well.
Okay, Ibu Agustina, hopefully answers the question. So, Bapak Ibu, if you have further question, you may raise your hand by clicking the raise hand button. Okay, there is Sulistio and Jasmoro. Are there any special tips when there is a conflict with a promoter or mentor or probably supervisor?
And when there's a complaint?
Conflict.
Oh, conflict. Okay, conflict. Yeah. Communication, I think. You know, I do think a lot of the conflict, it depends on the conflict, of course, but I do think a lot of things sometimes can be avoided by just having that communication, you know, right throughout. I do think, you know, even from the data that I've just seen, I do think, you know, there's a certain element of vulnerability that comes with saying, I don't know. And not to fear saying I don't know, and to ask the questions, because I think when there isn't that communication and when the questions aren't asked, that everything becomes heightened for the candidate, because you're struggling really on your own and you don't feel like you can, or you're not allowing yourself the, you know, to communicate, to discuss, and to show I need help. But I do think a lot of sometimes a lot of those kind of conflicts and tensions that come from just lack of communication. So I would say communicate, say when you don't know, you're there to learn. And there's nothing, you know, again, it's like people's views around learning, that it all needs to be perfect. You can't show that you don't know. And I think those kind of thoughts maybe sometimes are unhelpful, because they hold people back as opposed to allow them to flourish.
I think the question also is regarding the cultural context as well, because here in Indonesia sometimes the supervisor won't accept the students' opinion. For example, for those who was doing qualitative, and then the supervisor focus on quantitative. So the supervisor will ask to do quantitative while the students wants to do the qualitative. That's kind of thing that sometimes we do have another probably another passion, but then we need to follow the supervisor as well.
Yeah, that's difficult. It's a challenge, isn't it? If there's a clash in that way, that can be challenging. It's not always easy to, you know, go against advice if you've been advised in a certain way. But ultimately, I think certainly within my context, it's, you know, important to think about, you know, where you want to go, and how is the study developing, and where you see it going, and what needs to be done, you know, in terms of your methodology. What's the best methodology? What's the best way to analyze your data, and in order to achieve what it is that you're setting out to do. But yeah, cultural. I think you're right. There's so many cultural layers and cultural elements around it as well. It can be very, very difficult. Yeah.
Right. Okay. We have Ibu Arjus Valentin here, who raised her hand. So, Arjus, you may ask the question.
Hello, can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for this chance. At this moment, I say that I'm very grateful for this material, and I think this is very important for us, especially for me as a teacher. But here, I want to ask some important tips maybe or trick by Miss Bróna. Can you tell us how to influence the supervisor, or how to make mindset awareness of the supervisor be open-minded? I think when we as students here of Universitas Terbuka give some opinion about our grade maybe, or our assignment that needs some changing here, and then we call the supervisor, we chat the supervisor without the response. The supervisor, I'm sorry, I have to say this. The supervisor just keep silent without read our comment or our critics about our grade here. So I need some tips or maybe tricks or what else to make the lecturer or our supervisor be awareness about how to bring the students be confidence in their result of the assignment. Because sometimes I feel, sometimes I feel I'm not confident and I'm not satisfied with my result. I do the best, but maybe the lecturer have any opinion about my assignment. I don't know. Just tip or tricks. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I'll do my best. Yeah, I do think, I think there are a couple of things there. Back to the idea of communication, and they're also always going to be, I do believe that the communication and about making it clear where you stand by asking the questions, are also kind of, expressing what you need in terms of, your development, because you know best. And I think there's no problem in asking for that, and asking for what it is that you feel that you need in order to help you progress. The other side of I think all of this is, which I talked a little bit about today, was the autonomy. Being autonomous, and taking control. So have you done a PhD? Are you doing PhD, or
Yes.
for yourself? Are you researching now, or no? You have done it already, or?
I'm a student of Magister of English.
Okay, right. Yeah. So I think, communicating first and foremost what it is that you need, and asking for that. Not always easy, but you can try. Depends on the context, depends on the person. The second thing is autonomy, and that was part of the doctoral mindset awareness today, is taking control of of your own work, of your own thoughts, and your own mindset around it, and using that then to inform development. So how can I develop, how can I develop myself, so that you're working alongside a supervisor, and hopefully you're getting the feedback that you need, but you're taking control of what you need. You're talking to other students, you're learning from better practice, maybe elsewhere, and then you're taking those elements, and then you're building and integrating those into your own journey. So I think autonomy and being autonomous and communication are kind of central and key, I think, and hopefully, will help you get maybe some of what it is that you need.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Miss. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking.
Okay, thank you, Bu Arjus. If I might ask a question, Bu Arjus, which study program are you in? Masters of English Education, or?
Yes, Magister of English.
Okay. So, for your information, Dr. Bróna Murphy, we have assessment system here that probably different with the conventional university. So the lecturer themselves, sometimes they didn't check the assignment directly, but we assign another lecturer. So sometimes we don't even know the result of the students. So
Okay.
we have a different kind of assessment system here, Bu Arju. So if you want, you may contact the head of the study program, Bu Arju, or you can contact me later because you are in our study program.
No, it happened on 2 months ago. The assignment, not the. I think I'm very grateful of the result, the ending result, nilai ujian akhir. Make me feel good, and this is just for the lecture. Please read our chat, or maybe hold on the phone if we if we call the lecture, because actually I think my answer is suitable for the instruction, but I don't know why it happened. So I just said that I'm hoping for the good result here. So when I see the result, my grade is very good, and I think it's not a problem. But maybe for the next, I hope the lecturer will respond our chat or our calling. Thank you. I'm sorry for this fault. I'm sorry for this statement, but I want to say this. Thank you.
No worries, Bu Arju. Thank you very much for giving us the feedback as well, so we can evaluate the system later. Thank you, Bu Arju. Okay, do we have another question? Bapak Ibu, you may raise your hand by clicking the raise hand button. Let me check if there is any question from YouTube. Check the chat. Okay, we have Ibu Milanita. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, Dr. Bróna.
Hi.
Okay. Thank you for your insightful presentation. Okay. As someone who wants to start the journey, the fear of being a student, the hardness, the struggle, how can I minimize the fear?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's that's an interesting question. I think there are a few things that look. There's within a journey like that, whether you're doing a 1-year master's program or a 2-year master's program or a 4-year PhD program, like I said earlier on, there are going to be moments that are going to be fantastic and really high. Then there are going to be lower moments. There are going to be periods of you don't feel like you're making any progress, and suddenly you make loads of progress. So it is a journey in every sense of the way. There's a lot to experience that's good, but we tend to sometimes focus on just the challenges, So it does obviously it comes with some kind of fear around that. But I think once students begin, sometimes students don't want to end because they've enjoyed it and they've loved doing it so much. You're also thinking of the end goal. What is it that you want to achieve at the end, and do you need your PhD for that? What do you want to learn? What do you want to research? Do you feel passionate enough about the topic and the project that you want to take on? And I think when you do, and when you know what your topic is, and you know that you want to do it, and you know that you want to achieve it, then I think the fear starts to subside a little bit once it becomes a reality and you start working with your supervisor. I think, your supervisor, depending on where you are, will help and support you along the journey as well. And that will also, and you have other doctoral candidates as well. I find, everybody supports each other. And that also helps with initial fear, which is normal around beginning. But once you begin, I think that decreases to some extent. So go for it. If it's something you want to do, absolutely go for it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Best of luck.
Okay, we have another question sent to the private chat from Enggar Moyajati. So what is the common mistake or wrong mindset of new postgraduate students when they just start studying and communicating with their advisors?
So sorry, what was the start, Maya? What's
the common mistake or wrong mindset?
Or around mindset. I think the thing I see coming through most is this idea of perfection, that everything has to be perfect all the time. And I think sometimes it stops students from starting because already they're starting from a high, this has to be brilliant. And it means that it stops them from actually writing a word on the page because they think it needs to be, exceptional quality. But actually a draft, a chapter draft comes from writing, just writing and writing and writing. And when you have it, you can make it better. But you can't make something better if it's not on the page. So I think letting go of this idea of that something has to be perfect and all writing has to be perfect and everything has to be the best. I think that's probably something that I see most that stops people in their tracks. It doesn't have to be best. Just do a draft and you can polish it, you can shine it up, you can make it better. You'll get feedback that will make it better, but you have to do writing first in order to be able to make something better.
Okay, so the fear of starting, probably that's
the
thing.
Yeah, and the pressure of perfection. Absolutely, I think I see that all the time. That kind of pressure from oneself, as opposed to from supervisors, but pressure on oneself for it to be the best version immediately. And that's not how writing goes, and that's not how thinking goes. It's a slow process, and it takes a little bit of time. Hope that helps.
Yeah, even I met some colleagues that saying that they are scared of sending emails to the potential supervisors because they think that they're not good enough to be their students. This kind of thing that sometimes block us to start the journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, it's awareness around these things and taking a chance and taking a risk. And, what's the worst that can happen? Somebody says, no, I don't have space right now, but maybe space will become available. Or they say, yes, I have space. Yes, be my student and do this work. So again, sometimes I think the doctoral context or the university context for some can be quite intimidating. And people think that, people who have a professorship or who work in it, are superhuman, or super, intelligent, super this, super that. And, the reality is, that even people who are quite high up in their careers and have advanced considerably also started as a student who was struggling to find their way and put their thesis together and to kind of get ideas and concepts and so on. So I think remembering that learning is a journey. We're always learning, no matter what stage we're at. And it's not necessarily a destination, but the PhD is the start of something new. And the kind of the unfolding of learning, and the lack of perfection, I think, has to be central to that. And being okay with making mistakes and being okay with getting the feedback and making things better. And it's the same for everybody, not just, it's not just you that's getting that feedback, it's just part of the process.
All right. Thank you. We have another question from YouTube channel from at Bahasa Indonesia class 9. How can we handle our anxiety if the result of our thesis or dissertation is not what we expect or different from our hypothesis? Do we need to revise our research questions, methods, or sampling?
Okay, so a few big things in there, and it also depends on a lot of things. But I think managing. I'll talk first about the managing stress. And again, it depends on where you are. But I think being part of a community of doctoral candidates can be very helpful, and whether that's an online community, and if you're just online, you can absolutely reach out and see if you can get in touch with other doctoral candidates from the university, or be put in touch, or maybe the university can create an online reflective space once a week where doctoral students show up for a half an hour. And I do see that, and I have experienced that as being very helpful in terms of managing the stress and the isolation and the workloads that come with a doctoral context. Because students can talk to each other, they can learn from each other, they know that they're not on their own, they can support each other, they know other people are also experiencing similar things. And when you have a space like that, that's a regular reflective space, it lends itself to minds, through that you can gain access into mindset awareness. Oh, you can learn from other people. What are people doing differently? Maybe I could learn from that. You could also bring in, every now and then, if you have a space like that within a university context, bring in a guest tutor who facilitates a conversation around these things and managing this, and helps to take, a fear, even if it's just 3 guest lectures in the year, or somebody who facilitates a workshop. So I do think that kind of support around well-being needs to come from the university as well. And doctoral colleges or doctoral institutes can, very often provide some support around the socio-emotional element in relation to academia. We need to do more, I think, around that. That will help take the fear and help students, manage the anxiety that comes with all of that. And obviously directly working with the supervisor then for the rest, are my questions working for what I need to do? What kind of data do I need to answer those questions? What kind of methodology would be the right choice for me right now? So they're the kind of questions that you need to ask, and kind of ask your supervisor directly if you need to, for the help.
Absolutely. I think I used to have they called it a PhD buddy.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it's a great system. I've seen it work a lot, where you have a PhD buddy, you have a seminar, a little space, online space every week, and whoever turns up. Not everybody can every week, but even if it's just once in the month you turn up, it's 12 times in the year, and it's better than 0 times in the year. And it gives you that, it takes the isolation, especially if you're online, especially if you're not seeing other people. And somebody can present their research one week, get questions, it can be critical friends. I think it's a really good practice.
okay, we have another question in the chat box from Yati Suparjo. What mindset shift should students adopt when starting a thesis so it feels manageable rather than overwhelming?
Yeah, a growth mindset, for sure. All the work that's been done by Carol Dweck, 2006, that big book in psychology, growth mindset. And it's the difference between growth mindset and fixed mindset. Where a fixed mindset is where you believe that you can't improve. I could say I'm useless at maths. That's a fixed mindset. I'm terrible at mathematics. I don't know how to count. I can't do it. And that puts me in a fixed mindset. I'm never going to improve on maths if I'm thinking I can't do it. There's no point in trying, right? Whereas if I say, okay, I find it difficult. That's okay, but I'm going to give it a go, and I'm going to try and learn how to do these ones. And then when I've done that, I'm going to try and do the next step, and I'm going to try and talk to people who are good naturally, maybe, and how can I learn from those? So I'm believing if I do a bit of work, I can make progress. And it doesn't have to be huge, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be messy and untidy, and and that's okay. But I think a growth mindset, believing that you can improve, believing you can change, believing that you can get advice or help, believing that you can read literature that's going to help you collect data, believing that you can do action and do all these things and get better, fine tune your assignment. A growth mindset is huge. And to try and minimize limiting mindsets. Because I think what I found in the literature that are even the literature and also in the data that I showed you today, sometimes we can go into limiting mindsets. I can't do this, or I'm not good enough, or I'm intimidated. I can't ask my supervisor a question. These are limiting mindsets that hold you back. Whereas, growth mindsets believe I can overcome all of this. I'm intimidated by my supervisor. Why? Because they know a lot. Yes, because they've studied for a long time. Right? When I study for a long time and I go through all this process, I'll be on the other side and I'll be able to help somebody else. So trying to, and this is where the doctoral mindset awareness comes into, is trying to move away from limiting mindsets and embracing growth mindsets and mindsets that help development and success.
Right. We have another question from YouTube channel from Nurhasana Muala 8724. I have a question, ma'am. How to contextualize our local language into international writing style, because you know that our writing is influenced by our local culture sometimes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's a really interesting question. And funnily enough, it's one that I saw coming up in my data as well. This idea of, how should I put it? A difference between status. If you have English as a first language or English as a second, as a second language. So very often, I think students felt that nativeness, or native speakers, for want of a better term, were more powerful, could do this more easily. This is what came out in the data. Whereas if you're coming where you have other languages and English isn't necessarily your first one or your most used language, it can be more difficult. Yeah. So I think it's probably, I would say that even if you have English as a first language, writing can be difficult. And secondly, yeah, if you're writing in English as your second language, you're absolutely bringing, influence from your other languages and how you write in your other languages, and that can absolutely be, it can be quite difficult, but it can also be helpful if you're aware of it. Which the person asking the question seems to be aware of it, which is already a very good step forward. I do find working with my own students where they've had challenges around writing, I do find that reading articles, reading academic discourse, looking at the structure of articles, looking at the language people use when they're talking about their methodology, talking about their literature and so on, the more reading you can do and the more sometimes I think kind of analysis of the text as you're reading it, that absolutely can help with your writing as well if you put that into practice. So looking at structure is really important, because different languages structure, they have different rhetoric, they structure their text differently, maybe to how English might do it. So if you're looking at lots of examples of English writing through articles or chapters, there's a lot that you can learn, and a lot of the language you can become aware of that you can use in your own writing. So I would say reading, and then trying to, use some of what you see in your own writing will help quite a lot, and drafting and redrafting as well.
We have, I think, one last question in the chat box from Bu Arjus Valentin. According to Dr. Bróna, do you think that mindset awareness is the key to unleashing our research potential?
That's a big question, and I'm afraid to say yes. But I do think it can be so. I do believe that it can be really, really, really helpful because it has. I suppose what I'm saying, none of the foundations that I've mentioned today are from me or are necessarily new. The foundations from psychology. There's a big body of literature that talks about awareness. The literature from neuroscience that shows lifelong learning and so on. The literature from applied linguistics. So what I have done today is bring about 4 different strands together to support the concept that I have and that I've seen in my practice, but also that I see in the data as well. And I do believe that it's going to be a very, very useful tool in terms of helping you to become aware of maybe the challenges, but also the good things. It doesn't have to be about challenges all the times, but if you're training your mind to focus on the good things that have gone well in your doctoral studies. So I had a good meeting. I had, this is neuroscience tells us this, if our minds will go down into the negative things and see all the things that are wrong and scan for all the things that are wrong. So we have to tell our brains about the good stuff and draw attention to it. And that's why noticing I did well in my doctoral meeting, I did well in my draft, I had a great conference, I got asked lots of questions, I've learned a lot from it. And you're highlighting all of these things, and it's not just, focusing on the challenges, but what reflective reflection does, and reflective writing and reflective conversations and dialogue do, is that, and especially the text when you can read back over them or a transcript, they allow you to see what things you've said that you mightn't have been aware of. And you can, print out a transcript after a conversation if it's recorded, and you can go through, with the highlighter, and you can really see, goodness me, I mentioned this 7 times, and actually I didn't even realize it was something that I thought was problematic. Then you see it 7 times and you think, okay, I need to think about how I might, work on this issue for the future and how I can change. That's there then, where for me, and for the concept that I'm putting forward, learning starts to take place. And you as a learner, you're autonomous, you're taking control, you're taking responsibility for this. You're not waiting for somebody to tell you, because somebody else might never notice. They're not going to be listening to you maybe that closely or hearing and seeing this all the time. But you've noticed it and you think, okay, this is something I can work on. So you're feeding your self-development. So it's part of the autonomy that comes with being, I think, enrolled in a PhD program. Sometimes people just kind of say, wait. They wait for the supervisor. They wait to be told. They wait for the next thing. And here within this concept, I'm saying, take control, so that you're also feeding into the feedback. You're also bringing things and learning. And these necessarily don't have to ever be shared. They're not necessarily shared with the supervisor, but they're for you. Your doctoral mindset, how are you making the changes? And you're using your own thoughts as data. Yeah, your own thoughts. It's there. It's all there. What we think is there. But we think and they go. They're transient thoughts. So we never stop to kind of think or reflect or, engage in introspection. And then we don't learn because we're not aware of the things that might be stopping us or impeding us. Whereas if we write it down in a journal, or we have a reflective dialogue with a colleague or a friend, and we transcribe that, and we look at these transcripts after, there's a lot to be learned there. So the data isn't us. We are the data. We are our teachers. And that's coming from, this idea of the doctoral mindset, awareness. And if we tap into our data and become aware of, the good things, the challenges, that will inform our development, and I believe allow us to make changes that will help us to succeed. So it might be somebody who's, avoiding doing a conference presentation. Even though you have the data, you have some of the analysis, you're ready to go, but you're just avoiding it. And then at the end, you go for a job and you don't have that conference on your CV because you missed the opportunity because, I don't know, there was fear, you didn't want to, do, I don't know, whatever the reason might be. Whereas your colleague who is writing down their thoughts every week, going back over it and go, I'm afraid of the conference thing. Okay, maybe I'll give that a go. Let me see what I could do. And they go, abstract, done. Right, okay, I'm going to the conference. They go to the conference, they present their work, they get loads of feedback, loads of ideas. They come back, they rewrite the chapter, they add things in, they change it up. and suddenly they're going for the job. They've had so much development as a result of attending this conference. They have it on their CV, and they took the risk and they went and they benefited from it. So I do think, what this idea of doctoral mindset, and it's also, I've borrowed the idea as well, and I mentioned this as well from, I think, Martin Bygate and teacher awareness, this idea of teacher awareness in the classroom, and being, the same kind of concept I've borrowed from him, and being in the classroom as a teacher, teaching, and then, reflecting back and changing one's practice and, making these changes. But I've applied it to the doctoral context. So it's kind of bringing all of these strands that all exist there in the literature, everywhere, in neuroscience, all of these things to help support this idea that I believe, from having worked with many, many students, but also from the data that I've collected, that I think can be, beneficial in supporting learning, for sure, at doctoral level and master's level, absolutely.
Yeah. I think we have no more question here. So we now conclude the answer and question and answer session. And I think there's kind of quote that I made from the presentation that you have delivered. For those who are struggling or will start the struggle, just keep moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what this does. It allows you to acknowledge and change and keep moving.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
keep moving forward for those who are struggling now or who wants to do their doctoral degree, or being a student, being a master student, or whatever you are. Okay, so I would like to express my sincere appreciation to Dr. Bróna Murphy for generously sharing her valuable and insightful knowledge with us today. We truly hope that the knowledge we have gained can be directly applied in our academic, professional, and personal practices. I would also like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the Director of the Graduate School, Professor Dr. Maman Rumanta, MSc, the Vice Director for Academic and Student Affairs, Professor Dr. Dewi Julia Ratnaningsi, SSc, MSc, the Vice Director for Non-Academic Affairs, Dr. Shain Pintor Siolemba Patiro, STMM, as well as the heads of study programs, lecturers, staff members, and the entire organizing committee. Thank you very much for your presence, support, and valuable contribution to the success of this event. Before I close this event, I would like to invite everyone to turn the camera on for a photo session. And then the photo session will be led by Milanita.
Okay, Bapak Ibu, please turn on camera and give the best smile. And for the slide 1, 1, 2, 3. Slide 2, 1, 2, 3. And the last one, 1, 2, 3. Okay, all done. Thank you so much, Bapak Ibu.
So we have come
Thank you
to
very
the
much,
end
everybody.
of today's event. You may complete the attendance form using the provided link. So please accept my apologies for any shortcomings during this session. I am Maya Puspitasari signing off. As today's moderator, I look forward to meeting you again at our next Bengkel Saintifik. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you, Dr.
Bye.
Bróna.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss.
Recording stopped.